Excellent. All right. So, welcome to the Set Free Speech, the podcast where we explore the intersection of recovery and faith through inspiring stories and insightful conversations. I'm your co-host, Eli Rivera, with your host here, Anthony Hinojosa.
Hinojosa, you nailed it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey towards healing and spiritual growth. In today's episode, we have some incredible stories to share and thought-provoking discussions that I believe will truly resonate with our listeners. So let's go ahead and dive in. Anthony, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty dang good, dude. This is actually really fun. We've been doing Set Free Speech, I want to say for maybe about 8 months or so, and it was me just interviewing just like people that are coming in that are really smart inside of our community. In our community, we have a lot of people that have like so much to say. They have so much backstory, if you would, and they have a lot of wisdom to be able to back them up as well. And it was always fun for me to be able to just interview these people and things. But you came onto the scene relatively recent,
yes.
And you have this excitement and this fire that I really, really do appreciate. And I think it's going to be really great to shove that fire right back into this podcast.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you really do want to step back into this role, because it sounds like you've had some podcasts in the past as well, some experience.
Yes, sir.
I think it's wonderful.
Thank you.
I think that given that information, to be able to kind of see where this podcast can go, I don't ever like to control things. That's one thing that I've understood in my walk with God, is that the more I try to control something, the more I begin to kind of like control it in a direction that doesn't make sense for myself or anybody else involved. So when you came in and you said, you know what, let's put some fire back into this podcast, I was like, that sounds great. It sounds like you should start heading whatever that looks like. So I'm excited to see where your mind can take us, because I just love, and anybody who listens to this podcast knows, I just love to talk about people things. Yeah. And it sounds like you're in the same exact boat. So I'm excited to kind of see where we go from here, and kind of and also the guests that we're going to be able to pull in, because we know a lot of people around here, and I think there's a lot of great stories that we can actually, get out here so everybody can listen in on and kind of hear it all. So it's cool. I'm excited.
Yeah, no, and that's actually, I was thinking a lot on that, the way that you operated and the way that you kind of let me come in and get, like, the way you let me do it myself, kind of. Yeah. That's the quality of high level leadership, right? There was, I think Jocko Willink was talking about, when there's a room full of people, there's two types of leaders. The one leader that will come in and say, all right, we're going to engage in this way. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it at this time, right? And then there's the leader that goes, hey guys, what are you guys good at? What do you recommend we do in this situation based on your experience? Yeah. And then they gather all the information, and then they say, all right, let's do that. Right. That sounds like a good plan. And that's kind of the way that you operated, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's probably one of the best ways of going about trying to figure out where do you fit people. It's like, well, they actually already have a place to fit. You have to figure out as an individual, how can I make that happen? Right. It's not necessarily about shoving them into a box that you need them for, because that is assuming that your idea is better than everybody else's idea, versus actually thinking, well, maybe somebody else has a much better idea than you. So how about you try to make room for them? How about you try to make a space for them to be able to kind of like exist and to be able to push their dream farther to where it fits in with yours. I've actually learned that a lot from Chief. Chief has really kind of taught me a lot about what it means to be able to, he says, be a gold digger. It's digging people's treasure out of them, and being able to get that out of them has a lot to do with being able to make way for them, and not to be insecure about where it is that you stand. Know what you're good at, know what you like, and being able to find what other people are good at and what they like to do. And then from that point, you'll be able to find out actually a pretty decent balance of how a team works together. So I'm excited to see what this looks like.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm very, very thankful to be a part of this team. Very excited. I was telling you, I just got out of jiu-jitsu practice.
Yes.
And so my body's in pain, but my spirit is very happy. Right. And typically in the past, I would have let the little things get to me today. For instance, I got a parking ticket earlier. Sure. Right.
Fun times.
Yeah. So I just moved to Orange County 3 weeks ago, officially. So, they're trying to give you a ticket for everything. They'll give you a ticket for using the restroom in the wrong spot, right?
It's expensive to live here, period.
Yeah. So I got to appeal those, and I'm going to work on that. But then also, as I'm driving here, I almost crashed 2 times, and it's like, that doesn't typically happen, right? Sure. And it's like, maybe the devil is trying to stop me from doing something great here. Yeah, so I'm very excited, and just to kind of get started, I want to kind of introduce your story, your backstory, right? Maybe tell the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you're trying to impact people through your faith-based ministries, right? Sure. Yeah. And then we'll tell the people a little bit about what this podcast is designed for. And this podcast, as we were talking a little bit, it's to bring recovery not only to the people in recovery,
yes,
but to normies and people that aren't in recovery, because the ultimate goal, and this is what you said, right, is to bring people closer to Christ.
Right.
And so I want to go ahead and let you elaborate on that one.
Sure. I think my story is, to me, a boring one, especially when I get like involved with a lot of people that have some really outrageous stories, like these stories that like deserve to be in movies, kind of like stories, right?
Yeah.
So I get like, if you would, insecure about my story. It's just like, there's not really a lot there. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like there's a lot of people that have my story, because my story is so mundane, and so many people's lives out there are so mundane that they're not really doing much with it. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have in this world, is that people are, quote unquote, doing fine by the standard of this world, but then they're not doing anything with that fine life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then you have some people that I've met in the past 6 years that have done everything by the book to be able to, quote unquote, destroy their lives, and they slingshot towards absolute success from that point. So it's like there's no middle ground of like this like mundane life. There's like no version of that. And I find that to be really interesting, because you have people that want to live like myself, want to live the most like, safe life possible, and then nothing comes out of it at all. And then I get to meet all these people who did not live a safe life in any way, shape, or form. And what ended up happening is that they end up like finding a way to be able to go from completely unsafe to absolutely adventurous.
Yeah.
And when I get to see stories like that, it motivates me to say, what am I doing with myself? What is my excuse? Because for such a long time, you can use the excuse like, well, at least I'm not like them, or at least I'm not doing that.
Right.
And what ends up happening with that, when you compare yourself like that, is you stay exactly the same. You don't really go anywhere. So my story is a story of just being a kid raised in church. I'm like second generation church kid, which means that all the time from day one, if you would, I was raised in church, which means I really didn't go anywhere from there. For myself, it was all about just keeping it safe and being able to just do what it is that a good church boy does. And I think that in my time frame of me, just kind of we'll say exploring whatever that means for myself in every stage of my life, it kind of didn't really get challenged anything other than, again, being safe. And so I did a lot of things very safe. So a big piece of my story here, and we'll say a characteristic, is that everybody in this circle, I'm in a circle of recovery. People that have gone through the craziest stories possible, that have died in overdoses, have come back to life, have like just nutty stories. But when they come into this circle, they come to the circle as outcasts. They see themselves outcasts from the world. The world doesn't accept them. The world doesn't see them as level-headed individuals, or even standard understanding leveled with the rest of the world. So they see themselves as outcasts. Funny enough is that like I came into the circle, and I remember telling people, they'd be like, "You ever? You done drugs before, right?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And they're like, no, but like, have you ever like tried drugs? And my answer is no, I haven't. I've never done a drug in my life. I've always been sober. My mind has never been altered in any way, shape, or form when it comes down to substance abuse and things. So when people ask me that question, I get to kind of like put myself in a really awkward situation, because although they feel like outcasts from the world, and me in this circle, I feel like an outcast in this circle, and also out in the real world where people are drinking and just having a good time with whatever their party lives look like, I don't fit there either. So I feel like an outcast within myself, because I'm like, it feels as though I'm looking for something that is familiar or at least comfortable, and I'm not necessarily finding that based off of circumstance. When I got here, though, recovery specifically, people chasing this and really capitalizing on this idea of recovery, when they started doing that, I'm like, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do something that's bigger than myself. I've been living such a mundane life for such a long time, but you're doing something that's adventurous, and I want to do that. And so everybody in my circle of recovery, all these big names to me, they were all doing something that I was not capable of understanding or could do myself out in the quote unquote church world. So when I found it inside a recovery world, it was interesting to me to see how they were doing things that most people that think that they're doing everything right in life could not do. They were not brave enough to do so, and they didn't think that their life was on the line to have to even do something that was adventurous. So when I came here and I got to see these people going through these types of things, I got to a point very quickly saying, these are not these people anymore. These are my people.
Right.
And when I locked that in, it became, how can I contribute to this?
Right.
That was the number one question for me. How can I contribute to this? Because I don't have anything to offer when it comes to circumstance, relatability. But what I can offer is what it is that I have. Is anybody interested? And come to find out very quickly that people are very interested in being able to grow in their idea of higher power and their understanding of God and all these other things, which I was like, I have a couple of pieces of information when it comes to that. Maybe I can help with that.
Right.
And that's where we fast forward to a time where we are right now, which is that I'm a pastor over at Set Free Anaheim, and I teach Bible studies. I help people get through the Bible and stuff like that. I do my very best to be able to break down biblical principles so people can understand what's actually happening in there, because I've understood growing up in church that the Bible and most teachers don't make it digestible. They don't bring it down. Chief uses his analogy. He says you have to bring the cookies down so the kids can reach them, which is just another way of saying you have to be able to break this down in layman's terms so everybody can be able to relate to it. And that has literally been my journey, and that's one of my favorite things to do in the world, is be able to teach somebody something that's relatively complicated, but to be able to see the light just switch on and then be like, wow, that makes so much sense to me. And then from that point, being able to watch people start to attempt to apply those types of thought processes. So as a pastor, and as an early pastor too, I really was ordained by Chief this year.
Wow.
But
congrats.
But for me though, it's been a long journey of learning as much as I have and being able to trust in what it is that I believe in too as well. And it's been fun. And anybody who knows anything about our little circle, the Magic House, we understand that we're different in the best ways possible, and we're just trying to keep feeding that. So me as an individual, if you were to ask me right now, it's like, who are you? It's like, I'm a broken sinner like anybody else who's trying to figure out my purpose, and then being able to share whatever that looks like with the rest of the people around me. I'm trying to build a church, and church is 2 or more are gathered. It's not building, and something's more fancier than that. And so because of that, it's just, our church is growing, and it's growing all the time, and we get to come together all the time. It's just really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And you really are a good, I heard somewhere, once that a good educator takes something simple and complicates it, but a good communicator takes something complicated and simplifies it.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah. And you're a good communicator.
Thank you.
I know I've been to your Bible studies, and I'm at Magic House on Sundays. So Monday, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, can you let them know what time to come?
So we do our podcast. Our events, specifically our Bible studies, on Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. We have a women's Bible study with Saint Sandra, which is Chief's wife, and then we also have a Bible study on Friday, which is Firm Believers, and that's my opportunity to be able to yell at everybody about some specific topics that really is the most raw version of how my brain works, and people seem to be entertained by it, so it's always cool. And then of course we have our Sunday night recovery nights over at Liftoff Recovery, which is where we're recording from right now, actually. Right. And Liftoff Recovery is just an extension of Magic House. Is like the recovery business, if you would. Yeah. And it's a good opportunity if anybody is trying to find some sort of place to go to. It's a good place to go to. But other than that, we use the facility to be able to host our Sunday night recovery, which is basically a giant recovery party. Every single week we get together and we use music, we're laughing, we're dancing, people are live performing. There's all kinds of stories being shared. It's a lot of recovery happening. It's like, as of right now, it's like close to 200 to 300 people that are showing up on a weekly basis, and we invite anybody and everybody to show up because we love it when they actually do. But yeah, those are our dates we're coming together. It's over at the Magic House during the week, but on Sunday it's over here at Liftoff, and it's always at 7:00. It's like the holy number, 7:00.
Yeah, and I'm actually a testament of the Magic House. That's actually how I figured out and learned about you guys, about this team. A little bit about myself.
Yeah, please.
I actually. Born in San Bernardino, or actually born in Redlands, lived in San Bernardino as a kid, right? I don't know if we want to go into the full story now, but I'm going to go a little quick backstory, right?
Yeah, go for it.
At about 17, I started struggling with addiction. So that's 10 years in. I've been a 10-year active addiction, struggled with 10-year active addiction, and actually ended up in treatment at a treatment center here in Garden Grove. And that treatment center would bring us to your event here at Magic House on Sundays. So I did that for 90 days, right? Every Sunday, not 90 days, but every Sunday of those 90 days, I'd come visit. And my goodness, let me tell you, it is absolutely different than anything else that I've ever been to, right? It's not just a meeting. It's not an NA meeting, AA meeting, whatever meeting. It's a recovery party, right? And so after seeing it, consistently, I'm like, man, when I get out of here, I got to get involved, right? See the difference in this time in my addiction or dealing with my addiction, I've learned the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
Right? You hear Mike Fiore say that, you hear Chief say that. And in the past, I didn't have that connection. I didn't have the emotional vulnerability nor the skills in my toolbox of life and emotions to be able to build a solid relationship. To be able, I was always looking to get something out of someone because I was so self-centered. My spirit was broken.
Right.
And this time around, what I've learned is to actually make meaningful relationships with people, right? And I've taken one step towards Christ, and Christ has taken 10 towards me. And look at where we're at. We're starting a podcast. We're getting this YouTube going. We're working recovery events. I'm doing the media for you guys. So it's like, it's been an awesome opportunity. It just goes to show in 30 days what's possible.
Yes.
I've moved to OC. I started training at AOJ. Art of Jiu-Jitsu is one of the best academies here in in Orange County, right? Cool. So got my ass beat a few times, but that's part of the game,
that's part
baby.
of it. Yeah.
I chose this life, so I'm going to go ahead and deal with it. But point is, guys, I'm very thankful to be a part of this team. Magic House is where it's at, 1567 West Embassy Street. Anaheim, California, 7 o'clock every Sunday, rain or shine, hurricane this, hurricane that, we're still here.
Yeah.
So to spit that recovery. So if you want to have a good time, if you're looking to have a good time, or just simply if you're not in recovery and you want to be around a sober environment on a Sunday as opposed to the other option, I recommend you come check it out. I did, and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that what I really wanted, at least out of this episode here, which I would deem our first episode, at least in the season. Last season, it was my interviewing season. Just all I was doing was interviewing people, right? Which we are going to do ourselves as well. But the majority of what it is that we try to do is we're going to try to figure out what our best format's going to be like, right? And as of right now, what we're thinking about is talking about specific subjects that are going to be tied to certain teachings that we're doing on a weekly basis.
Yes, sir.
And so, but this very first episode, I was very much interested in seeing, like, the audience should understand who they're listening to. And I believe that. I believe that if you're going to sit down and listen to somebody, you should, like, kind of know, like, well, what are they like? Like, what are they into? And, like, things like that, right? And so we already did, like, this very quick kind of intro on who it is that we are, right? But obviously there's probably going to be some deeper things that I think people would be probably very interested in.
Books.
I'm sure they'd be very interested in knowing who is this guy, that I'm sitting over listening to. Well, if we're looking at the dynamics between you and I, and you've already mentioned before, and this is something that I have in mind for this podcast, is that there is a world of recovery that a bunch of people that are not in substance abuse recovery don't know anything about.
Right. And
there's a whole entire world of people that are not in substance abuse at all. Right. A bunch of quote unquote normies that are doing good things also that the world of recovery doesn't know about either. Right. It's not necessarily about who's got it better. It's more so who can bring the goods to the center.
That's right.
And that to me is what a church is. A church is bringing all the different backgrounds that you got, all the different experiences that you have, and bring them to the center, bring them to God. Right. And when you bring them to God, God's able to make something out of that and say, and shoot it right back to everybody else, right? So what it is that I can bring to the table is going to be my experiences, right? As somebody who hasn't done any drugs in my life, but being able to still go through pains in the world, being able to have to deal with the emotional states of everything. I tell this to people often enough. I didn't do any drugs, which means that I never had that opportunity to be able to run away from any emotions. I had to face every single one of them as they came through my whole life. But then there are other things that people, like I said before, people that have gone through addiction, that they know what it feels like to have a quote unquote rock bottom, and the feeling of being able to bounce back out of that, to be able to say, I know how far I can take it and how far I'm capable of going, and even to a point to not even caring. Right. That's something I'm not 100% familiar with when it comes to circumstances. And so what I would find to be really valuable is to be able to bring these two worlds together in a specific place that says, can we actually help each other out? To be able to say, what have you learned in recovery? Right. Bring it to the center. What have I learned as a church boy? Bring it to the center. And being able to say, you know what? I think we either are overlapping in our solutions, or we may be able to have something to be able to help each other out.
I agree.
And so I think that your experience of bringing it into the fold is somewhat new to me as well, because I don't know you that well. Yeah. I have not dug into your background, and I think that's really important, especially given the fact that we're starting a podcast together, because now I'm going to be able to get to kind of find out where you're coming from when it comes to your brain and everything. Yeah, right. And so, well, obviously, what this means is the obvious question that comes up is, how vulnerable do you think that you are?
Well, let me tell you, my therapist would say I'm very vulnerable, right?
Your therapist is like, all right, good. That's
chill. But, I think that in the book or the big book of AA, it says we'll intuitively be able to handle situations that used to baffle us. One of those being me sharing my story with others. And I've been able to do that because I was so down and in the dumps that I finally just walked into my therapist's room on the 54th day of my day in treatment. And I said, listen, I can't keep carrying these things on my shoulder. I'm just going to drop them right here in front of you, right? And we're going to go ahead and start working on this because this is terrible. It's a terrible way to live. Yeah. So, I mean, if you want me to get into it, I can kind of get into it right now.
Yeah, sure. So whenever I talk about vulnerability with people, it's always like this. It's almost like a little back and forth about what vulnerability means, because vulnerability to me is a constantly moving process. Yeah. Because vulnerable now is different than vulnerable later, because you don't know what it is that you have to be vulnerable about until you break through those like levels or stages of vulnerability. So where you were 5 years ago in your vulnerability versus where you are right now is going to be very different. Absolutely. And so that's kind of what I want to know about you is between, say, like, because the last time that you had some sober time was what, about 5 years ago or so? Or a little
so I was 22 when I went into IOP treatment. I never did inpatient treatment. I did IOP when I was 19. Then I did IOP when I was 22. Then I went on this 5-year run, and now I'm here at 27 sitting in front of you after doing inpatient 90-day treatment with a continuing 90-day IOP treatment.
Nice. Okay, cool. So there's a difference between the two. That's good that we have a 5-year gap, because I really truly believe that people change a lot in 5 years' time.
You biologically absolutely change. Yes. Literally, the cells in your body, everything regenerates and is completely new every 5 years.
Yes, exactly. So given that information, I would like to know at that time, if you can dig back into 5 years ago, what were you being vulnerable about 5 years ago? And it's not to discredit, because obviously you went on another run after that. It's not to discredit any of that, because it's important. Whatever kind of movement you made at that point was contributing to where you stand right now. What type of vulnerability were you kind of tapping into at that point?
The truth is I had no vulnerability, right? That is why I went back out on that 5-year run. You see, I think it's a disservice to yourself as a human being to not utilize the resources given to you when you are in treatment. When I was in treatment, I had a therapist, a spiritual coach. I had, people that had the rad T's, facilitating groups, all these things that I could have absolutely used for my benefit, but I never did. Gotcha. I never took the courage or was vulnerable to break down what it was that I was looking for a solution for. Why was I running to drugs and alcohol to fix the problems in my emotional state? Right. And I never got that deep. And so I white knuckled a year and 9 months, and then boom, a white knuckling meaning I just gritted it out, you know what I mean? No spiritual work, no emotional intelligence, no nothing. I just ended, and I understand completely why I relapsed again.
That's interesting. So as far as your vulnerability went, was I'm an addict and I need help?
Ooh, that's a great question, Anthony. In fact, I'd never accepted step one. Step one is accepting that you're powerless over drugs and alcohol.
Because given that information means that the question ends up turning into, what landed you in treatment to begin with then? Who put you in that seat?
Oh, that's my parents.
Perfect. There we go.
Yeah, my parents. Oh man, and if we go back, each time I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. I'd be greedy if I sneezed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that.
I'm blessed with. Look, in the past, I didn't know how to even say that I was blessed. I didn't appreciate anything, right? So, but now I'm able to say it, and I'm not saying it to be braggadocious or whatever, but you have to look at, regardless of your circumstances, we're blessed. If you're sitting there listening to this podcast, however you are, you're blessed. Yeah. You just haven't, if you're not feeling that, you just haven't accepted it yourself, right? So, my parents are the ones that, and a terrible breakup, 7-year breakup, of course, and all these things that led me to it, and so
that's good. I like to hear that, because like what that means is that there, like you said, the acceptance part of the whole thing is like really ridiculously important, because you're not going to tell me that I have a problem and I can go along with that, right? And be like, yeah, sure, I guess maybe I have that problem, whatever the problem is. It doesn't matter what it is, but until I actually accept it, at that point is when I'll change my my whole entire perception on what it means to find a solution.
That is right.
And so for you to finally get to a point, so then obviously you failed at being able to keep being able to keep your sobriety there. And when you did, what do you think this time around? What was the moment that got you to a point to where you think that you finally like said, you know what, I might have a problem, and I think it might be an issue.
The education. Behind alcoholism, the disease of alcoholism. I never really understood it, right? I never really understood the disease of alcoholism. What does it mean, right? What does it mean to be an addict? Now, this time around, I really did learn, alcoholism is a disease that, how do I explain it? See, I'm at a loss for words, but I'm going to explain it how I know it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I struggle with addiction and OCD. Okay. So I have a ton of racing thoughts at all times.
Yeah.
Okay. You pile that with an inability to process my emotions, and then I pick up a substance or an alcoholic beverage. Of course, I'm going to become an alcoholic.
Sure.
Because it eases those thoughts. It eases those emotions. It helps me run away.
Yeah.
So I already struggle with addiction. We could play tic-tac-toe right now, and I'll be addicted to tic-tac-toe for the next 30 days.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You want to eat the same thing, and I eat the same thing over and over and over. I'm an addict as an addict is.
Right.
Now, the fact that I chose to use drugs and substances gave me that disease of, addiction and alcoholism.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I wish it was never called alcoholism. I wish it was called doing the same thingism. Yeah. Because then more people would understand and maybe not take it as such a negative thing. My mom's like, oh, you're an alcoholic. No, I'm not. That's not me. I'm not that.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to accept that. Right. But when I understood that by picking up the drugs and the alcohol, compiled with my OCD and my addictive personality, it's what led to alcoholism.
Right.
So alcoholism is the disease of like being an addict, doing the same thing over and over again. But you're an alcoholic when you pick up the drink to run away from the emotions.
Right. It's almost like a subcategory or something, right?
Yeah.
The main category is being able to do the same thing over and over again, mainly thinking that it's going to be a solution to whatever it is that you think that you're missing, right?
That's right.
And so whatever that thing that it is that you're missing, which most people is going to be joy or purpose or and happiness, anything like that, right? When people try to chase whatever that looks like for themselves, they end up going to the easiest, I would say, low-hanging fruit to be able to find that, which is like really, we'll say, instant gratification, as they say. That's right. And so instant gratification, there's a lot of instant gratification solutions out there, right? And because of that, alcoholism and substance abuse happens to be, I would say, some of the most obviously messy ones. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it can be quiet, but after a while it kind of blows up and it turns into something really gross, right? Well,
completely breaks your spirit.
Yeah, but all the other addictions have the same type of results, which is that it can blow up and it can become very obvious. It's not frowned upon as much as those two are there.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons why, again, is because it can be taken from 0 to 100.
Yeah, you don't get DUIs with the chess addiction, you know what I mean?
Right. And you don't get it with the junk food addiction either.
Right.
So those things take so much time. People literally have heart attacks and are literally dying from cardiac arrest because of all the crappy food that they're eating.
Yeah.
But that takes so much time for it to actually for that to happen that nobody sees it as a pandemic. Nobody sees it as this like epidemic or this big thing that needs to be stopped right now. Nobody says like, oh, you're in the way. Nobody ever says that because what the truth is that you can do these things in moderation. And you'd be like, you know what? It's actually not that bad. And the same thing with like something like sex, right? But if you pull that to the absolute max, you can destroy yourself within that.
Absolutely.
Being able to eat food or have sex, these natural kind of pleasures, if you would, there's nothing wrong with being able to engage with that. But eventually what will end up happening if you do it a little bit too much or become obsessed with it, it'll get way too out of control by that point. And that's the point where people will say something along the lines of, hey, you need to knock it off.
Yeah.
And but when it comes down to substance abuse and alcoholism, it jumps in literally the moment that you're high.
That's right.
You can get to a point to go from 0 to 100 of people saying like, you're kind of one, either out of control, or two, you're getting kind of annoying to me. Right. And that right there ends up becoming, can you do something about that right now? And that's why I find it to be so important that people are recognizing, listen, kills you slow, kills you fast, it doesn't matter. What we have to do is be able to understand why we keep on going to this place, right? Yes. And again, I get to tackle the things that kill me slow.
Yeah.
Where all my friends have been able to say, oh, I'm tackling the thing that kills me. Like literally killed me like today. Like I can like literally die in a day just based off of my own addiction. I'm like, well, my addictions will kill me like 50 years from now.
That's right.
It's like, but what's the difference between the two is the fact that it's just time.
Yeah.
You know? But it's the same, like you said, it's the same mentality. The same mentality is that I just want to escape from whatever it is that I'm dealing with right now. And I would love to just find whatever it is that's easier for me to get to. A little escape versus a big escape. It doesn't really matter. It's still an escape by the end of it. And I agree. And I think that it's a big deal to be able to address those types of things too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just scratched the surface. I didn't even scratch the surface. I tapped it, you know what I mean? But, yeah. And for you too, we haven't even heard about you, you know, a little bit about your story, you know, but, you want to go ahead and talk about that, or?
Like I said, it depends. So what do you want to know?
I want to know what drove you to be part of the recovery community, having all the opportunities in the world. What is it that drove you to help people like myself and other people struggling with addiction? Well,
Chief would say it probably the same way that I would. When I got here about 6 years ago, I think from this point, I was freshly divorced. I wasn't married for very long, but it was enough for me to be able to feel like, oh man, that's terrible. Like, this is something I was looking forward to, and now it's like, it's not there anymore.
Right.
And whether it is that I destroyed it on my own or not was something I had to process way later. But at the time, it was very much like, man, my whole entire world that I built for myself is now starting to fall apart. I don't know what that looks like for myself.
Loss of identity, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Because it really was like, this is what I'm looking forward to. I want to be married. I like the idea. I think it's going to work out. And when it finally gets to the point where I get to make it happen, it begins to fall apart on me. And so I was real down on myself. And at that point, I thought to myself, you know what? I think this is the time where I can start doing something different, something that's a lot more so for quote unquote for me. And that's when I started getting into photography again. And at that point,
great photographer.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And at that time, I was doing a lot of video work, and so I decided, you know what, I'm going to start practicing some photography work. And when I did that, a friend of mine who was a pastor from a different church that I knew, he hit me up and he said, hey, a friend of mine is looking for somebody to do a music video. And I said, oh, really? And I said, yeah, check on my name. And so I got in contact with this friend. So a friend of a friend ended up being Chill Aguilar, and which is a Chief's son. And I was talking to him for about a month about doing this music video for him. And by the end of it, we ended up coming together after that month. And when I got there, the music video required a bunch of people. It was almost like a party scene, if you would, like everybody hanging out on a barbecue and stuff like that. And there were so many people there. There was like probably a solid 100 people there, and there were motorcycles. There were like dudes that I've never seen before, and a bunch of people that are just, you know, like just a fun group of people, like so different and diverse.
Right.
And one of the people that he really wanted me to meet, obviously, was his dad. And I met him, and he says, "Hi, my name is Chief." And I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you," you know. And he was trying to tell me that well, we want to do some videos and stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh yeah, we'll talk about that later. And eventually, you get to like near the end of the shoot, and I got to know people a little bit more. And Chief to me at that time was just some random dude. I really didn't know anything about him. Right. I've heard plenty of times through my life some people thinking that they've done something with themselves and like, you know, try to sell themselves to the video guy because they want to get some video stuff. It happens to me all the time. And so I really wasn't that impressed with whatever he was saying, mainly because I was kind of discrediting everything he was saying. Cause I was like, I'm kind of busy right now. I'm doing this.
Right.
Well, near the end of our time, and I was kind of just getting to know a couple people sitting around, you know, I got to sit down with Chief, and he said something along the lines of, oh yeah, now I had the biggest motorcycle club in Orange County. When he said that, that triggered a conversation that I had with my uncle probably about 2 weeks prior. And I was like, my uncle said the exact same thing. He said he was part of a club that was the biggest club, motorcycle club in Orange County. I was like, well, they can't be the same ones. Like, so somebody's either lying or, you know, somebody, you know, it might be the same one. So I asked him, I said, my uncle said he was part of a big motorcycle club. His name is, and I told him his name is Randy. He's a big old Mexican guy. He's tall and stuff. He said, "Oh yeah, Big Randy. I know him." And he described him like a T.
Oh,
and
you
I was
know
like,
Big Randy
no
too?
way.
I didn't know Big Randy.
That's funny.
He goes to First Love Church. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. He had asked. He's like, "Oh no, yeah, I totally know him. He was totally rolling with us back in the day." Blah blah blah. I was like, "No way!" And so I called up my Uncle Randy. And I was like, "Dude, I'm sitting here in front of Pastor Phil," and he's like, "No way!" And so they talked to each other on a speaker and everything. I was like, "What a trip!" And it was from that point I was like, "Okay, so you're the guy that my uncle has been talking about the church that he's been going to when he was a bit younger," and he literally just talked about it. So so from that point, it almost like opened up an avenue in my head and my brain about like who this person was, who Chief was, and Chief that day gave me a documentary which just got finished in 2017. It was called Set Free Posse, and it was basically a documentary about his life. And so I watched that documentary that night, and that night I got to understand generally speaking what his life was and what he's done, the controversies, the amazing things that he's done, all of it. And it was exciting to know that I knew somebody who has not only done something but is currently trying to do something. And it kind of opened it up for me to say, like, I do want to be attached to that. And so I made the time to start doing videos with him and Dr. Richie at the time. And eventually got to a point where he invited me to stay with him. And at that time, he wasn't really having people stay anymore at their home. But he invited me over, and I said, and I thought about it for a couple of days, and I said yes. And then I went to go stay with him, and it literally cracked off this whole entire journey. And remember, at that time, I was divorced, which means I didn't have anything else. To me, I was like, I just need something new. I don't know what that is. All I know is, I just need a community, right? And I knew this guy had something different, something that I was attracted to. It had a lot to do with his understanding of Christianity. Right. And I was like, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. Let me just like kind of hang out for a bit. I stayed, and I lived with him for a year. And in that year's time, I found out so much, not just about how he functions as an individual and what he thinks about the Bible and things, but I got to find out what it means to be in the world that he's in, which was the world of recovery. Right. And I got to learn from the ground up, not just being able to be around him and how he sees the world of recovery, but also to be able to start working in the world of recovery. And that cracked open all kinds of things. And to a point where I even started a relationship with somebody that was in recovery who was not in recovery. And it was an absolute disaster in my life for the next 3 years after that. Okay. And so from somebody who stayed away from anybody in a drug addiction or anything of the sort, I actually got into a deep relationship for 3 years with somebody who was trying to figure out what recovery even meant. It was a lot for me as an individual. It was a lot for her as well to process what I was trying to process. So the whole thing was like this. It was almost like jumping head first into this whole entire world that to this point, again, 6 years later, that I absolutely respect. It's my family. Like when I can speak to people about what recovery is or what my church is, I have to explain to them. It's like, it's a world that I can almost guarantee that you're not familiar with. Yeah. And funny enough is that you can even say that to people in recovery too. Yeah. You can say, trust me, it's not a world that you're very familiar with. Yeah. And it's been a journey to be able to learn everything on the in between. But that's what got me there. What got me there was, as Chief would say, Anthony struggles with the love drug. And it's me being able to be heartbroken over these certain relationships because of my codependencies and my what Chief would also call Captain Save-A-Ho tendencies, which is this idea that I can go out and grab somebody and say, it's okay, I can save them, And those two things together has absolutely destroyed me. And I've had to work on that. In the past year and a half, or it's more than that, a year and a half, I've been working diligently on those things. And I couldn't without this community, because this community has taught me what it means to be able to point out these certain types of flaws and these addictions, as you were talking about, and being able to say, I'm brave enough to want to do something about that. I have to call it out. I have to be brave enough to want to do something about it, and I have to execute. And even when it hurts, even when it sucks, you still got to show up and you still got to take care of it. It doesn't matter. It's part of who you are. Therefore, you're the one responsible for it. And the community around me has been able to kind of help me with that. So what attaches me to this community is, again, the solution-based understanding of things. And on top of that, all of the support that you're going to get in here. There's no way you can be judged, because there's always going to be somebody that says, oh yeah, my story is way worse than yours. Right. I have a crazier story than yours. So what that does is it raises the bar of what it means for anybody to feel sorry for themselves, to say, oh, you don't understand what I've been through. Somebody else is like, well, let me tell you what I've been through. Right. When that has happened enough, it comes to a point to where that means everybody's covered when it comes to acceptance. If this person who has a crazy, wacky story can come here and be accepted and loved and then find a solution for themselves, what's your excuse? And that's how it is that I had to understand myself. What's your excuse, Anthony? How come you can't, get over this love drug thing? The answer was I'm coming up with excuses for myself. That's what it is. Right. And I'm too scared to actually lock in a solution. So being able to land where I am right now is to be able to say, there's a lot of other problems that I have, but I know now that I'm 100% capable of being able to tackle them on, especially given the tools that I'm given by this community. And I think it's wonderful. And all I want to do is give back and say, how can I help you now in any way, shape, or form that I can. So it's cool. It's been fun.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. I mean, that's what I say. How many as quote unquote normies can take 90 days out of their life? Yeah. Like if they go I went to treatment 90 days. 90 complete days out of life. No phone, no family, no nothing. Yeah. To be in a place to literally work on spiritual modalities, breathwork techniques, meditation techniques, spiritual growth, mental growth, education on how to better yourself, right? It's not very many. Yeah. So that's why this podcast is beautiful, because we're going to be able to bring 2 points of views and ultimately bring everybody closer through to Christ through, bringing recovery to the normie and the unnormal. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, by the way, too, I'm not allowed to date for 1 year. That's the rule. That's a good rule. I can't date for 1 year, and so forget about it.
That's good. No, but it's a good way to go about.
Yeah.
I remember telling myself, it's like, I'm just gonna be celibate and single. And I didn't know how long that was going to last. And I'm sitting here at about, like I said, over a year and a half of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, that was probably that was the best decision I could have possibly have made, because I didn't understand how deep rooted that stuff was. Yeah. Because you don't really know who you are until you remove all, or at least most, of the heaviest distractions that you give to yourself. Because by that point, when you do remove them, it's only you. Yeah. And when it's only you and you're sitting there scratching, being like, what do I do with my time? What do I do with my life? It's like, good. That's a good question. Figure out what you can do with yourself. And these solutions that you've had before are not on the table.
Right.
So what are you going to do? You have to go on an adventure by that point. You have to figure it out. Exactly. Yeah. And you got to feel, it's like, I'm going to put myself in situations that are a little more uncomfortable than usual. And I'm going to do that because I want to know how I am. I want to know who I am. Yeah. I want to know what I like. I want to know what I don't like. When you figure those things out, that's when you get to a point to say, wow, life is actually really great. Which means that if you can accept back into your life something like a relationship, this is not what my life is. This is not the foundation of my happiness. This is an added blessing to what I already have.
Addendum.
Yes. And you cannot have that unless you know what your actual foundation is. Right. And that's why I think that, like, the time frame that it is that I have been single has been like, oh my, it's like I have never been able to do it before because my foundation has always been relationships. So when I talk about codependency, I'm very clear about the idea. It's like, oh, trust me, I know what codependency is. Yeah. Like, I'm like poster child when it comes to my understanding what that looks like. So when I'm capable of getting farther away from that and working towards what it is that I am, who it is that I am as an individual, it's been so beneficial. It's really helped me out a lot. So it's exciting. I'm happy for you. No, 1 year, that's good.
I'm happy for you, man. If you would have seen me crying to my therapist a week ago about how I'm doing all the right things in life, why can't I find a woman?
Yeah, that's good.
He was like, don't worry about it. God has a different plan for you. I said, yes, sir. But anyway, so let's go ahead and tell them, if anybody wants to go ahead and maybe hop on this podcast with us. Yeah. Maybe if they want to join us, we could hear their story. You want to send them your email? You want to tell them their email? Maybe they could reach out to us. Do you want to do it that way?
Yeah. Well, not my email. I think the best way of going about this is probably going to be through our social media.
Social media.
Okay. DMs and stuff like that.
Set Free Anaheim?
Yeah. At Set Free Anaheim over on Instagram.
Yeah.
Same thing on YouTube. If you were to be able to type in all one word at Set Free Anaheim, you'll find our YouTube there too.
Yeah. We're going to go ahead and dive into that YouTube aggressively here soon.
Yes. Yeah. And we'll put those links. We have a link tree that kind of attaches to all those things. I'll put that in the description for this episode. And on Facebook, we're on there too. Type in Set Free Anaheim. You'll see our logo there. And those are the main places to go to. So if anybody is like interested in sharing their story or talking to us, or
the Bible studies, or this,
or want to show up or get involved, that's a big one too. If you want to get involved, hit us up and let us know what you want to be a part of. And chances are, I'm just going to tell you to show up. That's the basic thing that I tell people, everybody. Yeah. The most important thing you can do is show up, because what we are trying to build is a community. It's not necessarily like, how can you help me with the thing going forward for me? No, we need a community, which requires for you to be here. Show up, and it doesn't matter what day you show up. Just show up, and you'll find very quickly that you'll find some acceptance and love, and maybe even solution for yourself. Yeah.
And I also want to encourage, so you could reach out to Set Free Anaheim. I want to go ahead and give them a couple of names, right? You want to follow at Phil Aguilar. Maybe Chiefs Magic House, right, on Instagram. What's yours, Anthony?
It's mine's on Instagram, Hey Wilson.
Hey Wilson. Okay, Hey Wilson's. Mine's Eli Rivera 916. So, I mean, just get involved, right? We're here to talk to you. You're here to talk to us. And we're just here to kind of build this community. I'm super excited, man. You have anything other to say? Last things?
I don't think so. I think this is a good, like I said, this is a good episode to be able to kind of get to know a little bit about each other. Obviously, what's going to end up happening is, as we keep going along, more and more is going to be unearthed.
Absolutely.
That's what this whole
the whole point.
Yeah, this whole podcast is about understanding who we are as individuals and how we relate to the things that the subjects that we're talking about. It's inevitable. If you're talking about these specific subjects of solution or growth or God or whatever it is, your story is part of it one way or another. Your experiences are part of it one way or another. And so it's inevitable we're going to get to that point. But to be able to, at the very least, kind of scratch the surface about who it is that we are as individuals and what brings us here is important. So I thank you for that. Yeah, I thank you, man. And I thank all the listeners for listening here to the Set Free Speech podcast, where we're merging recovery and faith. That's the goal here, and bringing people closer to Christ. So thank you. I want to say I'm signing out. And Anthony? Yeah, that's all I got, man. Thank you. I appreciate your time, man. Yeah, thank you. All right. Take care, guys.